Thank you very much for coming to hear our students. My name is Allyson Miller. I'm the director of the Academic Integrity Office. I did not do all the work that went into putting this panel together. That credit goes to Shannon Wen in the back. Thank you very much, Shannon. So we've had so many conversations among instructors and staff about the impact of generative AI on teaching and learning. And we thought it might be a good idea that maybe we bring in some students and actually hear what they have to say about the topic. So we have a lovely panel of students here. We tried to get some across different disciplines and things like that so that you can get different perspectives. And I'm going to jump right in because they have lots of interesting things to say. So can we start by just going through introductions? We'll start with you, Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm a first-year MEng Aerospace Engineering student. I did my Bachelor's of Engineering at Carleton University. I'm also the MEng Student Representative on the Graduate Program Council for FIAS. I'm new here. I don't use generative AI for my academic pursuits, but I use it for my personal pursuits a lot because it's very useful on learning skills and cultivating those skills. And I've also used it on a more technical and engineering side. There's generative AI design on structures. So this is the chair frame that I designed with generative AI. It's just a cool sort of evolutionary design. And I think this is going to become a lot more popular and you'll see a lot more organic looking structures. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome, thank you.
Hello, my name is Mia. I'm the public health fast track student and I'm in my second year. A lot of people get confused what that means, fast track. So I've already done an undergraduate degree from U of T. I did life sciences there. Now I'm doing applied sciences, a little bit different, not too much. Do I use AI? I don't use it. I have tried to use it. I can talk more about why I decided not to use it, not to continue using it. A lot of professors scare you, but yeah, I don't use it too much anymore. And yeah, I guess that it doesn't impact my productivity though.
So say why you stopped using it.
Why I stopped using it? Because I think one of my professors very recently told me about how it creates sources, it creates citations for you. They're all false, maybe not all, but most of them are. I did not know that before, so thank God I stopped using it way before I knew that it was all false. From a science perspective, I think that's really important because you do not want to risk creating false citations, let alone using someone else's work. So that's why I completely stopped.
Thank you very much. And Taryn?
My name is Taryn Gray. I'm first year at journalism, but I'm technically third year because I transferred to journalism. I haven't really used AI for my academic work before, except in specific assignments where we're supposed to use it. And so we had one of those this year where we had to make a fake Twitter post with AI. And so we had to make a convincing image, and that was interesting. But I think overall, I don't really think it's something that you should be using in your academic work yet, because I think at this point there's a lot of stuff that needs to improve for it to be used ethically.
Great, thank you.
Hello, my name is Prachi and I'm a second year computer science student. So I've actually used generative AI, but in terms of to help me understand concepts a little bit better, being a computer science student means I'm spending hours in front of my laptop just coding. And at a certain point, after I've stared at my code for too long, I can't tell the difference between what am I missing, where am I going wrong, especially if it's a logical error, which means your code is right, but it's just not doing what you want it to do. So in terms of times like those is when I resort to using generative AI to help me understand where it is that I'm going wrong and why is it wrong. So it just enhances my understanding better. That's how I've used generative AI. I found that it actually improved my productivity because rather than being stuck on a dead end for hours and then feeling demotivated, it allows me to keep going, pushing forward, getting more curious about certain things oh, why does this thing work and why does that not work? In terms of things like that. And definitely, I feel it's improved my skill development for coding aspects. So yeah, that's how it's been so far.
Thank you so much. And Victoria?
I'm Victoria. I'm in my third year of the law and business program at TRSM. I used ChatGPT a little bit last year just to kind of fool around with it, see what it was capable of. I had one professor in particular that was really excited about it and suggested that maybe it was something we could use for research. I quickly found out that that wasn't necessarily the case because it's not a search engine. It gave me some fake articles to look into, which I spent a lot of time looking for, only to realize that they didn't exist. Because my program is very writing heavy, I don't use it for my studies, mostly just to kind of see what it's capable of. I'm worried, I guess, using it for writing. I feel like I don't want to lose that skill. I'd rather practice it myself, and I want to be certain that what I'm submitting is accurate.
That's great. Thank you very much. So that was just kind of like the foundational question that we were going to open the conversation with. And then we have a couple questions that we're going to start with that like maybe two panelists each will respond to. And then we're going to open the floor to you folks. So first question. This one is for Makadas and Prachi. So how can instructors build trust with students to create an open dialogue surrounding ethical concerns of generative AI, and what changes do you think need to be made to assessments in light of generative AI? And just to provide context, before you folks came into the room, all these folks were talking about how the instructors are actually talking about it more than the students are. Okay, so we'll start with Makadas.
Okay, so this is a really interesting question, and that's true. The instructors do talk about it way more than we do. They also assume that everyone is using it, which isn't correct. So sometimes instructors, well, not all, but sometimes they do forget that everyone comes from a very different background. So when I did my first year, years ago, I was never taught about what plagiarism was, what paraphrasing was, why it's important to use citations. We were never taught that. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing or whatever happened, but I was never taught that in high school. Well, I did it from a different country, maybe that's why. So I think it's great if instructors could actually talk about it. What we're doing in my 6th year, if we did this in my 1st year, it would have been so much better. I would have known why it's important to use my own words. So maybe let's say in the first lecture for like first year students or incoming students, if we just sit down and talk about it for like the first hour of each lecture, why it's important to use your own sources and to do your own research, that would be great. So instead of creating this fear around it of how it can be so bad, and whenever this topic comes up, the instructor looks at the syllabus slide and is like, turn it in, we can catch you. Don't use that phrase. Don't say that. Maybe say, please do your own work, do your own research, and talk about it. Instead of saying, if you have any questions, come to me, address the questions right there and then. Open that conversation. Do this way, way before we're doing it now. That's the next question. So what changes, again, like talking about it is great, can be made. Or what's the second question? Can you go back?
Sure. Do you think that the assessments need to change?
Okay, so from a science perspective, if I'm not using it and you're not assuming that I'm using it, maybe we don't need to change the assignments or the assessments. I understand it's a concern because a lot of things moved online in the last few years. But with us, I'm going to speak from, again, a science perspective, not from like a design perspective. It's really easy to catch if it's not your own words, right? Turnitin is very good at that. So again, I don't think there is a need for a major change, but just addressing the concerns is really important. Talking about it is really important.
Great. And interested to hear Prachi's perspective since she's actually using it with her work.
So while I agree with some of the things that, I'm sorry, I don't want to mispronounce your name.
That's okay.
But while I agree with some of the things, I actually find it really interesting because, so when I graduated from high school, I was in that phase where it's just like from COVID, we went to in person, so I didn't really have much exam experience, and then from right after that, I went from high school to university straight on, and I still remember I was in my first year, it was my first semester, when like generative AI started to boom. So it was just like everything was so new and different. But like having like generative AI kind of acted as a way where like if you need help with anything regarding certain topics, like it was there to assist. To be honest, I find this question a little tricky, to be honest, because personally, I find that it depends on which program and which course it is like being referred to. So my instructor for last semester for ethics, he assigned us to do a group project in groups of 4 to 5 students where we conducted a survey about ChatGPT's influence in post-secondary education. And so my group and I, we conducted a survey on Google Forms that we sent out to students in different universities, college, and asked them about like what are other students' intake on this aside from just TMU students. And so we got like more than 100 responses, which was really amazing because after that we coded and using Python, we coded an algorithm that can analyze the data, and we asked it to like find different patterns, like doesn't matter what program you're in, doesn't matter what year you're in, or like what topics you're using it for. And as a result, we found that it wasn't really as shocking to me being in computer science, but what we discovered was that if you're in like the arts program, for example, using generative AI isn't as useful as it would be because it lacks the creativity that human touches can add to. Or just like it's still unable to do certain things as of yet. Not sure about this future, but that's something for a later on thing. And what we found is like students who are like in business, for example, or healthcare, or even history, politics, or even like computer science like myself, we're the type of students who use generative AI more often just to help us understand the context even better. Sometimes when we're like being commuters or like having other factors that influence our studies, we have these little gaps on the material being taught. So like we watch YouTube videos, go to Khan Academy, all different resources like textbook and everything, but sometimes that leaves us confused. I've been confused, like in my first semester I had to do discrete math, and that was a completely new concept to me. Like if P implies Q, then that's true. That's something completely new. But to grasp it even more clearly, in terms of that generative AI where it actually produces true things or true results, that was really helpful. And aside from that, some people also use generative AI just as their free time to learn something. So the way that we saw it was that students find their curiosity is like allowed to grow from using ChatGPT or other AI's tools that are being like integrated and created by the day as we speak. So so going back to the question of like how can instructors build trust with students to create an open dialogue, I believe that if the instructors could be a little bit more engaged, if they make their material a bit more engaging, so like not reading like slides, but like actually explaining what the point is to be taken from, then students would be actively willing to listen and take away from the lesson that the instructors are trying to teach or the material that we're supposed to be learning. Also, like
That's great, Prachi. That's great. Thank you very much. So the next question we have, for interest of time, I'm just going to have Zach respond to it just because we lost some time here. So Zach, imagine a world where everyone has access to quality generative AI. What skills do you need to develop to distinguish yourself from others when you enter the job market?
So if everyone access to quality generative AI, which I think is going to be within the next few years, the skill sets that I think are going to become most important are in-person soft skills. So the ability to, network with someone and have a good conversation. Because with generative AI, anyone can submit an excellent resume. That's a skill set that's often taught to us, right? With generative AI, it sort of democratizes the quality of your resume. So I would say in-person soft skills are very important, but I also say that the skill sets required for employers, I've never held a full engineering job, so I'm not exactly the most qualified person to comment on this, but I think it's going to be the same skill set, but much more focused on the application of those skills and experience in that than the demonstration of those skills. So through my undergrad, I could claim to know 4 or 5 different CAD softwares, which are softwares used to design things, because throughout my classes, it's more or less a check mark. I have a project where I have to say, I can do this, and the instructor says good, and the Engineer Accreditation Board of Canada actually more or less implements a checkmark system of you need this many modules from each unit to claim to be an accredited engineering student. But I would say that to an employer, what they really are looking for is the application of those skills. So it's one thing to say, I had an assignment for a class where I designed a bracket, which is a class I had, and I had to manufacture the bracket. But on my capstone project, I had to work with a team, which is much more important to an employer than, I think, demonstration of self-work, to design composite parts on a race car. So there's so much depth involved in that process and the application of those skills that I think is lost when implementing sort of a checkmark system. So to summarize my answer, I think the same skills are important, but a more in-depth understanding and application of those skills.
Fantastic, thank you. And then this is one that I'm most interested in and curious about. And I have Tran and Victoria who have signed up for this one. Does generative AI provoke anxiety in any way in terms of job market, in terms of your academics, etc.? Tran, you want to start?
Sure. I think because of the amount that professors emphasize that they'll know.
Nice and loud.
Oh, I think because of the amount that professors emphasize that they'll know when we're using AI, it kind of makes me nervous that real work could be mistaken as AI with the checkers that they use, because they're not 100% accurate, and they're not as accurate as the plagiarism checkers as well. So I'm kind of nervous that my real work, and I could be penalized for using AI when I didn't even use AI because it's so it's not perfected yet, trying to catch AI. And also I think it also provokes anxiety with the way that if other people are using AI, lots of other students, the level of quality in the work, it could change, and so it could make them do the assignments quicker or easier. And so the standard for work could go up, and it could be more difficult for people who don't use AI to complete the assignments and stuff like that.
Just got a little chill.
I think the anxiety it provokes in me is more broad, more from a societal point of view. I think there's already a lot of research out there that people don't always identify AI when they're reading it. The tone seems very similar to the human. So we're not very good at detecting whether or not it's AI. There's already news articles specifically in the sports industry that are written entirely by AI. And that might seem it's just recapping a sports game, but I feel that sets a precedent for the kind of information that's out there, especially online, especially when things that are when misinformation or not true are more likely to be clicked on and read. I'm worried about our attention spans, I guess, and not when there's so much out there and the ability to produce so many things so quickly that may or may not be true. I'm worried about the quality of research out there. I'm worried about there being an inundation of just fluff, I guess, or things that aren't adding to the general discourse, I guess.
Fantastic, more chills. Okay, so we have backup questions, but we wanted to make sure there was time for you folks to ask questions. So this is an open call to the audience to talk to our students. Yes.
Just a question for everyone. Do you think that the instructor should trust students more about in terms of their own judgment of using, say, ChatGPT or generative AI?
I can take that to start.
Please.
I think yes, I think the benefit of the doubt is always appreciated, especially when you're dealing with like as students progress and learn more about what's expected of them. I think especially upper year students are more likely to know between like what's their own work and what's not. I think what's needed for that trust though is, as was mentioned earlier, more education on what's actually appropriate. And I think right now there's a lot of maybe a lot of instructors aren't quite sure what they expect from their students in terms of use of AI or not using it. So I think if that base level of knowledge about what's acceptable is there, then I think that trust and respect should be put forward.
Fantastic. Anybody else?
I'd like to add on to what Victoria said. Coming from a standpoint where I've done even like another assignment on just in general about how this really influences, like how generative AI influences how students learn, you'd actually find it shocking. One of the schools tried to ban it, and that did not go successful. In the end, they had to revoke their ban and allow students to use it because it's become a part of students' learning like life. It's a tool that students are like now depending on or relying on for like further assistance. But personally, what I believe is that if you openly talk to your students about, oh, what are your, like Victoria said, what are your expectations? Like, this is how you can use ChatGPT. Like, ask it questions about, what's a general structure you can use to create it. But use your own details or evidence to actually write the paragraph for the written report. Or even like in terms of code, we're told to comment or like create code. ChatGPT can create code on its own, but there are several different ways to code the same thing with different efficiencies. So it's easier to catch in that way. And it's not useful to anyone if they're just like submitting for the sake of marks, because we're here to just learn the skill itself. So if you actually trust that, if you'd like talk to the students openly, that this is what we want and this is what we expect, we know that some people might use it because, again, we don't really know what's going on in some people's life. They might be busy, and then before they know it, there's like the deadline project assignment, and even if they didn't want to, they're just like remote to using ChatGPT to write their whole assignment because they want the marks, they don't want to fail something. So I guess that's where I would stand on that.
Thanks, Zach, and then we'll go to a new question.
I'll take a contradictory opinion. I don't think you can trust students at all. You know, it's an ancient student tradition of paying someone else to write your essay for you. So Chegg is a whole business that exists purely off of paying someone else to do your work for you to save yourself time. So the only difference with ChatGPT is that now it's like a Google search away getting someone else to do your work. So I think there definitely needs to be an education on acceptable ways to use ChatGPT, but I also think that if you give an inch, students will take several miles, or should I say several paragraphs from ChatGPT. And, you know, you're going to get cases where students say, well, I thought this was acceptable, you know, when 2/3 of their essay is written by ChatGPT. So trust but verify, I would say.
That's a good line. And both things are true, right? It's not an either or. There are some students who are going to. Questions? Yes.
We're, of course, preparing you guys for the job market. What would you tell to an employer who learns in an interview for those who haven't or are not quite using the technology that would feel that you're underqualified if you haven't used it enough? And what would you tell them?
I think that builds on Terrence's point of if the chat GPT is writing my answers, I might look like a second grader, right? So if I'm writing it, it's not as good as what chat GPT is doing. But then it goes back to we are not allowed to use it, right? I mean, unethically, of course. You can use it to build your skills and to learn. But I think the employer would understand that I didn't use someone else to do my homework and I did my own work. And if it's not up to the quality of a computer, then maybe hire the computer. I don't know.
Can I get a time check, folks? Okay, great. Anybody else want to respond to that? So employer expectations that you have some skills with respect to working with AI.
Seems valuable, but like going into the legal field, I don't 100% know how much they'll be looking for AI experience. Maybe I'm misguided, but it's like right now it's not in my curriculum.
Other questions? Yes.
I'm a student as well.
Sure.
So just some questions / comments. If anyone had comments about accessibility. Full disclaimer, I don't know anything about ChatGPT, never used it before.
Mhm.
So I do have questions about accessibility and making sure that's equally accessible to all students. Another one is autonomy, like whether or not to be able to use it. It's one thing for professors to encourage it, and it's one thing to endorse it and allow it. And the last thing is more from an ethical standpoint. I think it's important to write and formulate your own ideas and be able to answer questions. So if you produce products, you should be able to answer questions about it. And that's part of showing your understanding. So if a machine is going to write your ideas for you, how will you answer to any questions regarding what you produce? And just being able to own your work overall and being able to answer, again, any questions about your work.
So can you break that down for just like a single?
Yeah, just accessibility concerns.
Okay, so let's pause there. Does anybody does anybody feel comfortable talking about that?
I will.
Go ahead.
ChatGPT has a free to use model and then a paid model. And what they've done recently is reduce the capabilities of the free model to improve the capabilities of the paid model to encourage people to transition. So there is definitely accessibility concerns there when you're locking, if you have two students, one who's willing to, pay $10 a month to get access to better essays, that's not great.
$30 Canadian.
$30 Canadian a month. I stand corrected. But I had a professor at Carleton who mandated use of the free version of ChatGPT to write an assignment in order to get students familiar with the software. So the free version of the software is still capable, it's just less capable.
So when you say accessibility, you mean equity?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and making sure
Okay.
everyone can use it. If it becomes a standard,
Okay.
is it expected that everybody can use it?
Right. Go
I
ahead.
can add to that. I'm not sure if everyone got the email, but our program gave us like a 90% discount for Grammarly. So I got that. I got it for $10. For $10 sorry,
What program?
Public health.
It wasn't. It was actually TMSU. Yeah. Messing with.
Yeah. So I got it for $10 for 2 years or 1 year. I don't know, but I still have the premium version. It's very cheap, $10. Yeah. So, but I use it just for grammar's mistakes, right? The Grammarly. I don't use it. I just learned that it has the paraphrasing tool in it today. We'll probably look into it, but yeah. But it's just for grammar mistakes. And again, I do not trust it completely. Sometimes it will give you the wrong response. So with that, even I look at each and every sentence and every little correction it gives me. I have to read through the entire sentence to make sure that it makes sense. So yes, it is accessible. Well, our program made it very accessible. But again, use with caution. Yeah.
And for the record, it was the student union that made that offer to the entire student body.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so other questions? We still have time. I have another question. Yes, please.
I'm just curious as to what software you are using for generative AI. Like I heard Grammarly, ChatGPT, are those the ones that you usually use, or that your grade students are using, or is it other software that is being used?
There's quite a few startups that are doing AI, but most of them are based on ChatGPT because ChatGPT is the most far ahead. And my understanding is that perhaps you might be able to expand more on this. It's because they have an API that allows other softwares to interface with it. So if a company wants to make one for writing tweets, they don't have to make their own generative AI. They can just license OpenAI software. But Google has one called Bard. There's something on Windows 11 called Copilot, and Bing is also licensing ChatGPTs. So there's quite a few options out there.
Great question. Anything else? Do we have time for one more? Yes. Okay. How do you feel about instructors using generative AI in their teaching? So this could be for development of course materials or grading of assessments. Lots of hands going up. Victoria and then Turan.
So I actually encountered last semester, in the winter semester, a TA who said that she ran all of our assignments through Grammarly to mark them. And at that time I didn't have Grammarly. So for me that felt kind of unfair because I wasn't sure of how accurate Grammarly was, or like I hadn't had the chance to use it myself. At the same time, like I recognize that these tools are being used by professionals, and so like they're trying to let us know like your boss could be using this to evaluate your work in the future also. I guess it's just setting that expectation. But at the time, my initial reaction was that it wasn't necessarily fair or what I expected, and it made me wonder like how else are my assignments getting graded?
Good. Turan?
I think that since we're all kind of paying like thousands of dollars to go to school, we kind of deserve to be taught by like real people who have experience in like the areas that we're learning. And so if a professor were using generative AI for like lessons and stuff like that, I would feel a bit like cheated because I mean they did the work to get where they are, but for them to just be using AI instead of what they've learned over the years, it just seems like shortcut. Like I don't know.
So Makatis, I'm going to ask you, just because we haven't heard from you for a little while. When you write something and you submit it to the instructor, how would you feel if the feedback on that writing was generated by AI?
Well, AI would say I'm pathetic, but I mean, AI has really high standards, right? Well, higher than actual humans, and it has really good vocabulary. So I wouldn't feel the best if the instructor wasn't doing the work themselves. I honestly would not feel good. I would actually bring that up to the instructor and be like, can you please do that again?
Okay, more questions from the audience? Oh, Zach, go please.
So to build on that, I think, the dystopian nightmare is I use generative AI to generate an assignment, and then the teacher uses generative AI to mark the assignment, and now we're just going through the motions. So I think if we make an agreement that we won't use AI, if you don't use AI, then I think everyone's, in agreement. I also think that specifically for grammar, there's a lot lost if you use AI to mark it. If you were to take Shakespeare's plays when he was writing them and mark them at the time with his grammatical standards, he'd probably do quite poorly because he invented a lot of terminology. He used a lot of advanced English, going in and out of formal and informal speak and so on that AI might not be able to pick up on. So I think there's a lot lost by forcing everyone to write to AI's definition of formal English.
Really interesting point. Any more questions? Yes.
My last question: Do you think AI can be considered as a learning partner?
Yes.
I would think it is a learning partner because it helps in a lot of fields. Even if I don't use it to write my assignments, I can always use it to learn new skills, right? I can always, let's say, put in the title of an article or an introduction, and it can give me like where to start, how to understand the article. If I'm really confused about something, it can simplify that for me. So it helps, but don't use it exclusively ever to write your assignments or to submit work. Yeah.
I would actually like to add on.
Nice and loud.
I think most definitely that AI could be used as a learning partner because after going through COVID, there've been a lot of change through education systems. Like some students are not comfortable, they just like the online, or some students actually like the in-person environment. And there's also been a gap between what students truly understand throughout those years of COVID and online learning. So there's definitely been a shift in all that. But what I believe is that if students were taught on like what type of questions to ask ChatGPT or AI in general, like for example, a question like, can you explain this concept in terms of this? So then it kind of helps them. So even at home, like when someone's like doing their homework, instead of asking for answers, if they're stuck and they don't feel comfortable asking a professor for help, or maybe like they're shy or nervous or something, then they can still get the help that they need, or like still be able to understand what material they need to. But it's just in terms of like how it's being done. So if we, instead of like banning or say don't use it, just encourage it in a positive way. I believe like while being in computer science, the way I use it is like, so I have a free model, free version of ChatGPT, and the way I use it is to just like further ignite my curiosity. In high school, one of my teachers, the greatest thing that he said was like, he always used to make us do practical things or learn things on our own. Because, and then we asked him once, like, why do you not just like teach us like every other teachers do, like just like, you know, have a learning plan and then teach us, and then we do the homework and then we get tested on it. And he's like, because I want you guys to be more curious about life and things itself. When you're curious, then you're willing to learn on your own instead of relying on other tools like AI. So that's my take on it.
Great. Yes.
So this is a curiosity question for you. So sorry, I'll start over. Do you feel that students should be able to opt out of using AI if it is required for an assessment? And this kind of connects to the questions about privacy, or if you have ethical concerns or climate concerns or whatnot. If an instructor is requiring you to use it for an assignment, do you feel like students should be able to opt out?
And because of time, I'm sorry, this is going to have to be our last question. Yes. Try, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think it would depend on what type of AI. Like, I said before that I had an assignment where we were supposed to use AI, and it was just generating an image based on like a prompt that we put in. So there weren't too many like ethical issues with that. But I think if it were like generative AI for like text, I would personally feel like a bit iffy about that, because I want to learn by writing my own material and not like having something else write it for me. And like I know that AI, you can use it just to learn and not, you know, make your own stuff. But I think like in general, a lot of people might not want to use it because of those reasons.
So let's do a quick show of hands. Do you think, hands up if you think that students should be able to opt out? Okay, 3 out of 5. We're closing on a vote. I want to thank the panel very, very much for sharing your perspective. Thank you folks for joining us. It was really great.